Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidt List. I am your host, Kurt Schmidt, president and partner in Foundry. And today's show, we're going to be talking all things change. Why is change hard? Why don't people like change? Why does everybody want change, but nobody wants change? Well, I brought one of my friends, Jonathan Banks, to talk to us all about his approach to change and his philosophy around it. Speaking of philosophy, I do have to mention something I philosophize quite a bit about, and that's networking, which I obviously, as you may or may not know, wrote a book about. And you can find that on Amazon. It's available now. So let's not talk about that anymore. Let's get right in and talk to John. John, how are you today? Thanks for joining me.
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here on Schmidt List again. Good to see you again, Kurt.
Good to see you. So, John, tell me about the work you do and where and who do you do it for?
Yeah, well, great question. First of all, I don't want to stop talking about your book, though. I think I've got to give that a little bit more time throughout our conversation. So I may have to call out a couple of quotes or something
All
from
right.
your book. Absolutely
I won't fight you
fantastic.
on that.
I should see you again. Yeah. Congrats on putting that together and getting it out there.
Thank you.
I'm Jonathan Banks. I'm the president at Next. We are a management consulting and design firm. We focus mostly around strategic planning and organizational change and in a hybrid format. We can talk more about why I call it a hybrid. And we work on people engagement. And what we want to do is we want to drive change by engaging people. And that's the key, our key philosophy in making sure that change happens within organizations. And would love to talk more about that.
All right, good. Well, perfect, because right now is a great time to be talking about change. We're still in we're just ending the first quarter of the year, and a lot of people are sort of figuring out what the year is going to be shaping up like, right?
Yeah.
We've had a lot of fears of recession. We've had a lot of layoffs, right? We've had a president indicted. We've had
Yeah.
a
That
lot of
happened.
change going on, right? There's a lot of change going on in the world. When it comes to that organizational change, I've been through a lot of
Yeah.
those sort of processes, and it can be really really painful. Can you tell me, Jonathan, like obviously we need change in order to keep growing, but
Mhm.
why is change just so inherently hard in an organization?
Yeah. Well, in an organization, in our lives, I like to keep us all grounded as humans and thinking about how we bring our daily experiences and the choices that we make in our daily lives and drawing parallels between that and what's happening in organizations. Because I think when we look at an organization, we tend to see that it's really a collection of people.
Hmm.
And that's why when we talk about change, we talk about engaging people to drive change because we want to understand what people are desiring for their better tomorrow so we can make a change that actually creates our best world, right? If we're changing our organization to help folks realize their desire that they have for a better life, a better tomorrow, and we do that enough times, we're creating our best world.
Yeah.
So drawing a parallel there, change is tough in an organization because it's hard for an organization to understand collectively what it wants for its better tomorrow and for everybody to share in that vision. If we're going to make a change, we're going to have to understand what's going to be better about this change. Why is my life going to improve for this? And how much is this going to cost me? How much is it going to take? Is it worth the cost to actually make the change? And so that's what makes organization change very difficult.
Hmm.
Um, at at a very just basic level, and it's look at your own life. It's the same thing. We have a
Yeah.
very difficult time making changes because a lot of times it's not clear to us what the benefit of the change is going to be. It might be costly to do it, and we might not be in it for the total journey as well. That journey can be very tough, and I imagine the journey is some of the experience that you've had, Kurt.
Yeah. Well, it is because again, from a leadership perspective, and I've been fortunate enough to be in a leadership perspective in a number of organizations. When you first start talking about change, it's very superficial. You're just looking at titles and you're just kind
Mhm.
of you're kind of playing Tetris a bit, right? Well, okay, we need to save some money here, so we'll take a few out of column A and move into column B, or we'll just get rid of column C or whichever,
Right.
right? And then it seems like okay, this is a good plan. It makes sense. The financials add up. I'm going to go and present that to people, and then people are not on board. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not happy with that, even though
Right.
I make the case logically. Do you see how this makes a lot of business sense? But
Yeah,
There's an old saying that I've heard a lot, which is people love change. They just don't love your change.
that's, I would say that's true in pretty much all senses, and I think that, yeah, we look at your example there, we've put the pin down in the map about where we're
Yes.
going.
Yes.
Right? But do we have fuel in the car? Or have we gotten, sufficient charge? And do we know where the
Hmm.
charging spots are along the way? And are we all happy about where we're going to stop and how many cars? There's just so many things that go in to that journey that actually creates the change that you're going to have. And I think that that is something that we oftentimes miss out on when
Hmm.
we're making a change is that we don't really know exactly how this is going to turn out. Like we know where we want to go and we understand that, but this is really the design aspect of the way that Next approaches change is that we have a destination, but we're driven by data and the human experience. And so we might want to make a change that demands different types of capabilities and structures and talents and people and incentives than we thought about when we were saying what our destination was going to be. So getting into a process where you can really understand what the people in your organization want for their better tomorrow, either both in their lives, but also in their professional lives at work, is so important to even understand the ingredients that you have to cook up the change that you intend to bring to fruition.
Well, yeah. And to your point about including other people, I mean, I can't get five people to agree on where to go to eat. So,
Right.
let alone getting people to agree on a larger business change or an organizational change can be really challenging. How do you know when you should just ask people to disagree, commit, right?
Yeah.
Is when do you know as a leader that no, we have to go down this road? I can't entertain any more discussions around other opportunities or any possible. I think that's one of the hardest things I've had to experience, where you do want to bring people along for the transformational part of it, but at some point, that can slow the process down, right?
Mhm.
So tell me about Jonathan about ways that you've experienced that, and how should I be looking at that as a leader and trying to overcome that? Because obviously, I want everybody to be on board. I want everybody to be skipping and holding hands into the change. That would be great, but that's just not going to happen, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, attrition's a real thing, so I'll just get that out of the way, and
Sure.
that happens, and you as a leadership team and as an organization, it's good for everybody to understand that who we're turning into might not be who we are today. And maybe this is a realignment with the values that we've been ignoring so far, or maybe we've responded to the world around us and realized that our values were outdated. So we're becoming something new, and
Mm,
that we can't expect everybody to go along with that. And so that's something for everyone to realize when this change comes about. Now,
yeah.
usually we don't talk about those things as the highlight, right? The
Sure.
highlight
Sure.
is this is an outstanding opportunity to call in our staff, to call in their experiences, and to figure out what we can build as an organization. Transparency is huge throughout the process. And one of the values that we have at Next is real. And as part of being real is to be transparent about why we're doing things, how it's going to impact you, what the benefit is from you, and maybe where the things that aren't benefiting you are going to occur too, and to put all that out on the table.
Yeah.
Um, you want to use all of the resources that you have within your organization to make the change as effective and as impactful as possible. And so we definitely want to do the job of understanding what's my responsibility as a leader to call people in and to get them involved in doing this change. I just want to
Right.
talk a little bit about some of the things some of the terminology we use when we talk about change. Oftentimes
Mm,
we'll talk about change champions and change resistors. And
okay. Sure.
you know, you and people will take those terms and say, "Well, you're a resistor, so you're naughty, or you're a champion, so you're great." For us, the way I look at this is it's basically defining from a leadership perspective what your work is and what your unresolved work is. If you're finding a lot of resistance in the organization, that means that there's more work for the leader to do to
Hmm.
make a clear case about why this change is happening, why it's beneficial. These are folks who spent a lot of time supporting the cause of the organization. And the chances are is they have some really good insights to share. And you want to make sure that you hear all of those. So at least give enough time in your process to be able to call those folks into the process. You may say that they're resisting, but a lot of times the resistance is coming from a place of good. And it's coming from a place of a point
Sure.
of view that doesn't seem as if it's been honored or heard enough. And that's just more work for the leader to do.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, again, you have to be very. I like what you're saying. You have to be very intentional because I've been a part, and you've seen in the news, even like with Elon Musk and Twitter, right? Like I'm going to hold a town hall, and everybody can participate in stuff. But I've already made my decision, and I'm
Right.
already going to do these sort of things. So, the town hall is really just sort of a smoke and mirrors to make you
Yeah.
feel like you're part of the process. So, to your point, how instead of just inviting people to meetings and discussion about change, how can I make people feel like they're actually involved in it? What are some activities or things that you would suggest to bring in more of the rank and file of the organization to help and assist in the change?
I love getting into the kind of tangible activities of all of this. And one thing that we want to consider is what are the conversations that are happening right now in the organization? Where do we have strong ties between stakeholders of all various places in the hierarchy, staff managers, directors, and above? Where do we have strong ties? Where are we going to be able to find some real strength in moving this change forward? And you want to engage with those folks. You also want to engage with them early on so you can start laying out your framework of convenings that you're going to involve the rest of the organization in as well. And so we always like to think about getting a baseline through maybe like a survey mechanism or utilizing a recent engagement survey to understand what folks are thinking about in terms of the organization, in terms of their engagement, in terms of retention, in terms of diversity, bringing all that information into play so we know where folks stand in regards to the change that we're bringing forth. Since we have those stakeholders that I mentioned before, that's a great group to leverage in conversations throughout the organization. We like to have a few pretty large conversations called knowledge cafes in our process where we bring together anywhere between 40 to 70 individuals in a certain meeting and allow them to think about some of the concepts that are tied to this change in a way that puts them in control of what the ideas that come out of that session are. And this is why a lot of what we do is a blend of management consulting and design is because we don't know what everybody's going to say
Yeah.
in that conversation. And no, we're not taking the Elon Musk approach. And there's certain situations. That's another conversation where we talk about why that happens, the mechanics of that, and
Sure.
why a person like that would make the choice. But these types of conversations where you have folks who are already kind of proponents of the change involved with the rest of the group who is being called in. What are your ideas about this? How would this change your day to day? And getting those types of views lays this foundational understanding that you can use to have more conversations with the organization. So we're going out and we're talking again and we're having smaller group conversations with staff, with managers, and getting their few points, collecting all that data, analyze it, bring it back, and let's go to the people who are to blame for this change in the first place, the leadership, right? Let's go back to them and bring them the information about what the organization is saying in a way that frames up some decisions about how to move forward next. And you want to repeat this until you get to a place that the organization can settle on. If you are running out of time to do this, that means that you didn't understand how much time it was going to take in the first place. And so we need to make sure that we give enough time for this process to go through and go through completely so we can get to a result that is satisfactory and beneficial for the organization in alignment with its values. And I just mentioned that this change process goes directly into operations, right? So you want to set up your process so it's utilized while the process is still executing. You don't want to go through the process and say, change done. Okay, we're leaving. And now let's get back to whatever we're doing. You actually want to activate the different functions of the organization while you're going through the change. That helps bring more people along and get them inspired about the future that you're promising them that's going to come. And it actually changes from being, strategic planning into organizational change to operations, all very smoothly if you have it planned correctly.
A lot of people have talked to me, leaders in the last 18 months, that have talked about the amount of emotional labor that's gone into the change that's happened, especially the pandemic and all these other things that have been side effects of that, right? One of the things that they keep saying to me is I just want a quarter or two of just consistency, no change, no nothing, and obviously, I'm speaking to a lot of people in that work in technology and design and consulting and agencies. Um, I think that's just a natural state. Is the natural state is change in those areas. There is no. I think one of them you want to get into home titling. Maybe that's a state that stays the same all the time, right? Like working
Just to
for
be
the MLS, like listing houses on the MLS, like that's pretty standard. They don't change. They haven't changed in 40, 50 years. Um, I think there's just a natural thing that you have to understand when you get involved in certain sectors. Change is the norm, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think we want to appreciate it in all sectors too. And
Yeah, sure.
I j- and I think comparing yourself to something that might seem a little bit mundane can actually be very enlightening for your own creativity. And I think your gratitude for the situation that you're in, and thinking about technology, thinking about healthcare. I actually just left before this conversation. Left first Tuesdays at Carlson School of Management, Future of Healthcare conversation. And it's very interesting there to think about the types of changes that are happening. And that's an industry that's really yearning for a lot of change.
Mm,
And it was very interesting to hear Lisa Shannon, who's the CEO of Alina Health, talking about a problem that keeps her up at night, which I think it might be a problem that keeps you up at night. And you wrote a whole book about it. It's the people. It's like the people. It's like, we care about the people and we know that we need to engage the people and engage the workforce and find a way, even if there is this calm that's happening. I think we'd be fooling ourselves to say that we want the calm without change. I think we just probably want to do a different type of change
mhm.
because, we are people who need to keep moving, that
Yeah,
especially if you're in a tech business, comfort is not quite your best friend in staying relevant. And
yeah,
so we want to keep moving and want to keep making these changes, but there are different changes for different times. And that's something
yeah.
I think we should explore in those conversations with leaders. What's the change that we want to be working on now?
Yeah, I like that you said that because we I think you should sort of quantify that scale of change, right? If we think about it in analogy, right? There's buying a set of dumbbells, there's buying a gym membership, and then there's buying a Peloton, right?
Right.
There's like these different levels of commitment to change that you're going to make, and right, and so because sometimes the idea of making change happen is out of desperation, not out of foresight, right? Not of you're predicting the future and you're seeing where is coming from. It's usually you're behind the eight ball because I can imagine, John, that when customers of yours or clients of yours are coming to you, it's not because they're planning a change a year out. It's probably something that they're in the process of and hasn't been going well, and they're seeking
Mhm.
advice, right? So I think as a leader, you do need to quantify that. So are there things that you do when you come into an organization, like an audit or an assessment up front that you think has been helpful in sort of judging where they are in that change?
Yeah, there's a few things that we do that are helpful. To just gauge the situation. Yeah, we do
Okay.
do an audit per se, and we got a number of instruments that we use to do that. And I talked about those a little bit earlier too, to be able to kind of create that baseline, create your stakeholder management registry, and figure out where everybody in the organization is aligned right now, and
Mhm.
where the where the big the big proponents of change are, and where we need some more help in that area too. And so we do assessments to lead us to creating a stakeholder management registry, so we can maintain the conversations as we go forward and keep building people up and calling them in. One of the most important things that we do though is we find out who the most high impact stakeholders are in the organization, and
Mhm.
we involve them in their own program. It's called Catalyst Advantage. And in that program, those high impact stakeholders are being provided with resources and the resources and the documentation, and we're helping them actually build new behaviors that support the change. And so
Mhm.
we're going to start with them on a month by month basis, working through various facets of change, different terminology, different ways of implementing change, looking at aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that's going to help us create a more engaged workplace.
Yeah.
And month by month, helping that high stakeholder group become more and more capable at all of those factors. The important thing about that is we still have the change project that's happening, but when those high impact stakeholders are coming in to do their work on the project, they can help everybody out on the project so much more than they would have been able to without having Catalyst Advantage. And so that's a really strong way of making sure that the stakeholders who are going to be moving this thing forward are involved and properly resourced to impact change in the organization in the most positive way possible. I just look at the type of data that we're pulling out of that program right now. You're seeing folks who are growing between 20 and 40% every month and being able to do a positive habit more effectively.
Mhm.
And so we just see this consistent growth in the stakeholder groups as they go through that program. And you see the results in strategic planning, or you see the results in organization change. And that's an important thing to do after we've done the audits, is to get that group together and have
Yeah.
them start the Catalyst Advantage.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there about tracking it, right? Because one of the things where even myself as a consultant coming in, the ROI is always a discussion, right?
Mhm.
Is that this change that we're going to make? What's the ROI? So having ways, even if you're not hiring a consultant and you're running this change internally, know that you've got to have some ways to track the impact of the change and some ways to show that the needle is moving up and to the left, right? And
Yeah,
because of the change, right?
absolutely. Well, and there's a couple different levels we like to track that at. So one thing is, how is the person, the stakeholder, the leader, how are they growing? And we
Hmm.
want to understand that, to produce that like value for the individual and to help them work on themselves. That's an important part of this program. The other thing is, we want to impact factors that matter. And the factors that all of our programs lead to at Next are ESG factors. And about a year ago, we decided to start measuring all our programs in that way, because it's becoming a universal language about performance. And when we're doing change management, we have an eye on uh, employee retention, we have an eye on diversity, we have an eye on engagement, and a host of other things that we look at through a change. And so throughout that change, we want to continue to get a measurement on the organization itself to see how we're doing in totality. Some of those metrics aren't going to move until after a year. It's going to take some time. It just isn't an immediate
Right,
response.
right.
We see the immediate response in the personal growth that happens in Catalyst Advantage. But those two sets of metrics put together are extremely powerful and keeps everybody locked on to what's important.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's human behavior that you're trying to really overcome for the sake of their benefit, right? Because I can't tell you how many times late at night on Amazon going, if I just get this one cable tie, it's going to change everything on my.
Yeah,
It's going to make my desk so much cleaner. I'm going to be able to manage
yeah,
my cables so much easier. And if I just get that one thing, and then
yeah,
a week goes by, and I'm like, man, if I get that box that can hold my extension, and I'll just get that, and that will just close everything up, and then it's ongoing, it's madness. And so that's just one person in their stupid office having a cable management crisis. If you're talking about an organization with hundreds of people and whichever, you're dealing with a lot of human emotion there, even though people don't want to really talk about it because it's work,
yes,
right? But you can't ignore it.
yeah. Well, I think the only thing sillier than that in this conversation is if if you're the leader of an organization and you're trying to apply twist ties and cable management boxes throughout your org chart and your strategic plan, like it's just not going to work. And
No.
uh, just going back to the human side of things, we have to be able to manage a change by feeding the organization what it needs to do to go in a healthy direction, to go in a direction that's going to have an impact and alignment with values that we seek to have. And you, as a leader, being articulating how to do that to too high of a degree is going to really starve the organization of its innovative capacity and
Yeah.
capabilities because it's all coming out of your head. So guess what? We're going on Amazon and we're getting two more twist ties this time, and it's going to be better. As opposed to going through the process of having a knowledge cafe and going through some micro group settings and making sure that you go through this cycle
Yeah.
as many times as it makes sense. Usually it only takes us about 2 times to get to a really great place. And also continuing to nurse the organization through Catalyst Advantage and then making sure that people have the ability to message, manage, and measure this challenging change that you're trying to conduct.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, Jonathan, I know we're at time here, but I really want to thank you. We're gonna have you back on. We're gonna keep talking
Yeah,
about change. But in the
absolutely.
meantime, if I want to contact Next and I want to know more about the work that you do, where's a good place to go? Where's a good place to find you and connect with you?
Absolutely. NCXT.co is the website. Go there. That's probably the best place to find out anything about Next. Search us on any of the socials and you'll find us there. NCXT. Thanks so much, Kurt. This has been fun.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. Well, we're this won't be the last time. We're
Yeah,
gonna do more of this. So thanks for
I
taking
can't
the
wait for
time.
that. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, thanks. All right, everyone. Thanks for taking out your time to join me today. I appreciate it. One last plug: check out the book. Get your networking on. It's a great book. I really think it can really help people that are challenged by networking. So take a look. The Little Book of Networking. It's available on Amazon, and we'll see you next time.